Okay, hello everybody. It's 7 o'clock, so I think we're probably about ready to start. We might have a few more people joining us, but in the meantime, I think we might do a couple of introductions. So I'm Frances Meek from the British Nutrition Foundation, and I'm Education Services Manager. And I've got with me today Roy Ballum, who's an education consultant. And also we do have Sam Booth with us today as well, who is the subject lead for design technology, which includes cooking and nutrition for Oak National Academy. So it's great to have both Roy and Sam with me today. And what we're going to do is talk about designing a modern food curriculum with Oak as your foundation. But we're going to cover lots of different aspects of food curriculum, both at primary and secondary level. But just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. So the webinar is being recorded. So if you've got any colleagues that you think might be interested in this, then please do let them know it's recorded, and it will be on the Food Effective Life website in the next couple of days. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat box and we'll try to answer them at the end. And then at the end of the webinar, we will have a very, very short evaluation, which would be really grateful if you could complete for us. It's really important for us to know what's gone well with the webinar, what perhaps we can improve next time, but also for our funders as well. And our funders, particularly for this, are the All Saints Educational Trust, and we're very grateful for their support in helping us do this teacher training for you as our food colleagues. So a little bit about what we're going to cover. So we're going to look at exploring a modern food curriculum, the social context and dimension of food, which I think is always a really interesting aspect of what we teach, planning and mapping progression, recipe diversity, using tools, planners and AI. And actually, I'm really looking forward to the AI section that Roy's going to go through today. Reviewing your CPD opportunities, because there's a lot of other things that you could be doing around your own CPD for food education, but particularly with Oak. And then next steps. So I'm now going to pass over to Roy, and he's going to talk about exploring a modern food curriculum. Thanks, Roy.
Thanks very much, Frances, and good evening, everybody. Thanks ever so much for joining us. So when Frances and I started to work with Oak, probably over a year and a half ago now, what we were challenged with was to help to support the current national curriculum. And I know that there's been a curriculum review, but also to think about the future of that curriculum too, and look to unpack it, because sometimes it's quite difficult. If you think about Key Stage 1, there's 2 lines pretty much that describe what should be taught in cooking and nutrition. And in Key Stage 3, there's just 4 lines, 4 sentences. So our job was to unpack and explore what a modern food curriculum might be like. And tonight we're just going to go through some of that thinking, but also just to get you to think as well. And I suppose one of the things I always start with is about thinking about our lives, because our lives are all about food and we make decisions, sometimes great ones and sometimes less great, but for different reasons. And I always try to think about food that maybe I had as a kid, or what I was taught at school, and I was lucky enough to do home economics at school, and about the sorts of things that I might have been familiar with and what I cooked. And then we think about moving that forward by quite a number of years, decades, and what food we have now and what our young people eat and what they're used to, and also about how our society has also changed too. And then thinking about the future, which is always more difficult. And this is actually an AI generated image. You can see, I'm not too sure whether we're going to be having that type of food, but it's just really to get us start to think about what is a modern food curriculum? How is it going to help people, our young people, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years to make these good decisions for their health and their family and their friends as well? So what are we going to teach? And I suppose one of the key things just trying to think of tonight, and please feel free to use the chat room to give us your thoughts too as well, because that's really, really important, is what are we trying to achieve via food education in itself? So One of the simple things could be, yes, of course, having the food skills to be able to cook for yourself. But there are many other aspects as well, which I believe we're trying to do through food education. So health and nutrition would be one. Knowing where your food comes from would be another one. Being aware of the diversity of food and how people eat food or cook food in different ways around the world. So there's lots of things that we could look at. And then also considering, what do we teach now? Does it reflect who we teach as well? Because that's quite an interesting one. And a few years ago, the BNF did some work around the future of food teaching, and it asked teachers as well as pupils. And that was really quite interesting to look at that research. And what the pupils were saying is actually they wanted something that was more appealing to them in the current world, rather than something that might be slightly more historic, for example. And also it's trying to think about how important things are now and how likely those things that we teach are going to have an impact in the future on these young people. And that's a much more difficult question to try and tackle and answer. So what do we need to consider going forward? And there's so many things. And what we did when we started off this journey working with Sam at Oak National Academy was to look at, what did some of the research or the good practice say out there? And I've just got a snapshot tonight, and I'm sure you can all think about things that you might use. So for example, I can always think about the core food competencies, for example, obviously the national curriculum going forward too. But nearly 10 years ago, I was involved with the Jamie Oliver Foundation looking at the food education learning landscape. And that taught us a lot of things about what we should be thinking about. The research I mentioned from BNF, the future of food teaching, that's a few years ago now. With the Food Teacher Centre, we did some research looking at food education fit for the future, and some of that was used in the CAR review. The CAR review itself, so that's different, and obviously there are recommendations on that, and we're awaiting to see what the next steps of that might be from government. There's also the BNF response to that, which we thought you might find interesting. Then there's also things around the climate action plan, and there's a plan needed by schools and a lead in schools as well, and that's really important to think about too. And maybe the new thing about creating a culture of healthy eating, that ethos in schools as well, with the new Ofsted framework that was published just late last year. The best food forward. I mean, there's some great work and thinking that's been done to really support and think about what food education might be. And there are many, many more things out there that we can consider when we're going forward. Now, what we believe that we've tried to do is to look at all those things and help you understand this and interpret it in your school in your own way, but using Oak as a foundation going forward. So while it's a new curriculum, it's built from the ground up, but it's based on the national curriculum. It's based on the things that you know and you teach. So it's not sort of trying to change it, but it's trying to expand it and think about different approaches, for example. And we've taken that research and best practice to date into account too, going forward. And this is all built on the Food A Fact of Life programme, which has been running at BNF since 1991. So it's got a good track record and actually been proven to actually have a good impact in schools with pupils and teachers too. And it's built around the Oak Way. Now, if you want to find out a bit more about sort of the key principles and so forth, we got other presentations that we've produced on this particular subject. And of course, you can go to the Oak National Academy website too, and just look at those principles in there. The food core competencies, which I've mentioned as well for children and young people, they've been out for a number of years now. They were updated about 8 years ago or so, but they're still solid. They're still there to help us think about what we should teach, not just about the knowledge, but also about the skills that pupils might have. And when I mean the skills, I don't just mean about food skills and as in cooking, but also things of skills around evaluation, for example, tasting and testing, for example, too. There's also the DFE teacher framework documents we took into account, which are there to help primary school teachers and secondary school teachers understand what skills they need themselves in order to teach food in secondary schools. But also we wanted to make sure we had that connection, which I mentioned at the very beginning, about the social and cultural connection with food and our lives too. And we also talked to many different experts, which included practicing teachers too. And we also try to use good sources of information too. So we're based in the UK, so it was the Eat Well Guide. We use the Food Standards Agency, for example, with issues to do with food safety and hygiene. DEFRA, where we looked at food provenance and aspects to do with food production. We looked at United Nations and so forth. So we try to use trusted sources of information to help build this curriculum to make it very modern, forward-facing for you. So what about this social context and this dimension of food? Why am I sort of talking about this tonight? What's new about this? Well, probably not much, but what we try to do is just to flag it up. And I'm sure most of you here tonight do already teach these types of things. And what we try to do is to make sure that the majority of the lessons that are in Oak, and there are 12 lessons per year, from years 1 through to year 9. So there's 108 lessons there for you, which you can download free of charge, loads of stuff. But we try to make sure they were very heavily linked to practical work, but also through that practical work, you can teach other subject content knowledge as well. So it's very sort of heavy based on that area. So we wanted to make sure that we could talk about things about heritage and history, for example, as you're teaching about food and nutrition and cooking, about geography and the provenance of food, about food culture and customs, about cooking techniques and styles, because they've developed over many, many years, about sustainability and climate change, which is still massively important to our food systems and what we pick and what we choose to eat, and food waste, for example. But also about that socioeconomic part, about the budgeting aspect that we might have to do, about where we buy food and how we buy that, and about our values around food as well. That's really important too, and about being an informed consumer. So these things are really helping to shape our curriculum. And you can see just a few of the screenshots here from materials that are on the Oak National Academy, from Sustainable Development Goals through to some history here around Cornish pasties, the Red Tractor logo, Pascha, looking at a Ukrainian bread eaten at Easter, so looking into food and religion, for example, as well as being more informed consumers looking at labels. So there's quite a lot there. And what we wanted to do as well is to make sure that when you're looking at this, you can use Oak as your foundation, because there's more to food than food. It's so rich, it's such a learning experience. And there are lots of social contexts that run all the way through the Oak curriculum and the lessons that we've produced on your behalf. And what you can use when you go onto the Oak website, you can use these threads and its search to find out more about food. So you can, as you can see on the right-hand side, you could look at maybe consumer aspects, or perhaps you're interested in focusing on food hygiene, or perhaps it's around the sensory work, tasting and testing. So these are really important aspects that you can find the materials that you need really easily to support your teaching in school. What we've also been doing is help you thinking about that planning and mapping progression. So when you're thinking about your own curriculum in your school, whether that's in primary or secondary, these are the sorts of things that you're going to be thinking about. So when we're thinking about progression for cooking and nutrition in the national curriculum, we've got Key Stage 1 running right the way through to Key Stage 3. So my arrows here just simply pointing that there's already some progression that's been built in for you. So let's take a look at Key Stage 1, where we've got use the basic principles of healthy eating. So that's 1, and then varied diets to prepare dishes. So that's 2 concepts there that we use. And then when we shift over to Key Stage 2, you can see that they've been expanded rather more. And then we go to Key Stage 3, they're expanded into 3 bullet points. So all the time we're building on that knowledge, we're building on that progression of knowledge and understanding as we go through. And what we've tried to do in Oak is actually to do some of the heavy lifting for you, to do some of that thinking, to help you plan your own curriculum, hopefully with a modern spin too. So where do we start? So we've got the national curriculum as it stands at the moment. And we've got those main strands of learning. And what we've tried to do through this process is to unpack these. So when you've got a very simple statement about a varied diet, well, what does that mean? What does that mean when you're 5 or when you're 7 or 9 or 14, for example? So we've expanded those unpack them all for you. So we've got those strands of healthy eating, the cooking, and also where food comes from. But what else is important? And this is the bit going back to that social context. Well, we also think it's things like the sensory, the tasting part of work, the food science as well. So why do things change, or noticing that they change? And we've built that into Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. The hygiene and safety is so important, and it's kind of almost obviously missing from the programs of study at the moment. So we really think that we've really featured that and made sure it's really important aspect. Also about our culture and heritage, and the way that history plays a big role in what we currently eat in this country, as well as countries throughout the world too. And about that consumer dimension as well, about being critical consumers that can evaluate and assess and justify and make good decisions for themselves and others too. But also we need to think about that sustainability context too. And as you can see, just a few more resources on the screen here. So we've got one resource, which is all around, actually, it's a year 9 lesson around katsu curry. But to begin with, it talks about recipe origins and modifications. And we're looking back at history, back in 1872, with different curry recipes from Japan at that time. Or perhaps it's about tasting and about a primary school lesson about the fruits and vegetables I like, and exploring the different tastes and smells and colours that you might get on fruit and vegetables, or the textures on the outside. Or perhaps it might be around food hygiene and safety, but really simple things from primary, starting with concepts about storing food in the right places, right the way through to different food labelling. And of course, looking at that food waste aspect, which is really important, part of the dimension of sustainability too. So what we've been trying to do is to build these progression building blocks for you throughout that. So, for example, if this is what pupils should be taught from the national curriculum, what we've tried to do is to have these sort of stepping stones. So we start with knowing that there are food and drinks. We've got aspects to do with bits of healthy eating, like 5 a day, for example. We've then introduced more concepts about the Eat Well guide and the 8 tips for healthy eating. Then we say, well, actually, and these foods actually contain these things, energy and nutrients, and they have a source and a function, and you need a certain amount. And actually, sometimes there are different dietary needs as well. So you can see from year 1 through to year 9, there's a progressive blocks that build up throughout a child's food and nutrition sort of journey throughout school. We've also been really importantly focusing on food skill progression as well. And what we've tried to do is to use some of the latest research that is looking at the different types of food skills that pupils can do. And it's all based on sort of motor skills, for example, whether that's gross or fine motor skills as they move through, and then picking recipes that help to teach those particular skills in a sort of structured, meaningful way, but also using recipes that are diverse and also embed other learning as they go through. So the OAK is your foundation if you're looking at planning your own curriculum or refreshing schemes of work or lessons, for example. So it's all been done for you. So I think it's a great starter for 10, as my old boss would say. It's something that you can look at and think, yeah, I can use this. I don't want to use all of it, but I'm going to use these certain parts of these lessons, or I really like the assessment part, or I'm going to use the videos or the online sort of quizzes that I can use too. And when you access this, you can see that all the lessons are divided into units, and those units are divided into cooking, healthy eating, where food comes from, and that social context. So really, really relatable to the national curriculum now, and what we hope in the future too. Plus, we'll make sure that the lessons are very content rich. Now, when you look through some of them, you might think, I can't possibly do that in an hour. That's fine. You pick what's good for you, your classroom, the resources you have, the pupils you know and teach every day, and you use the bits that will support their learning journey. That's really important. And you can split lessons in half, just use one slide. It's really up to you to interpret it and use it to support your needs in your school. And all the threads which I've mentioned earlier, they've all been woven through the whole curriculum. So they support progression, and you can pick these out to make sure that you've covered them in a sort of really practical way. and they're all flexible. So like I've been saying all along, you only use what you want, and that's the key thing. And I think it's great having such a free resource available. And we've also tried to make sure that they're progressive and they're connected in a certain way, but also they're standalone. So if you just want to go in, you're not interested in curriculum planning too much at the moment, but you just want a good lesson to see how it goes, you can pick one out and use it. But knowing that we've been thinking about unpacking the curriculum and thinking about the research and the other things available around making sure a curriculum is modern and to the needs of young people today. So the year groups and lessons, as I mentioned, so we start from this, for example, primary, year 1. So these are all the different units. We go and drill down into a unit. So this one's all about food from plants and animals, has 3 lessons. And then we can then go into one lesson. And then the lesson, you can download all the resources for that. And as I mentioned, there are lots of different sort of activities to do, as well as slide decks, a video, and so forth. So there's lots of stuff that you can do, very rich, and it's all editable as well. So we've unpacked it. So as I mentioned before, so we've looked at Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and this is just year 1 that we've unpacked it. And you can see Key Stage 1 here has 2 sentences. Well, just in year 1 here, we've unpacked these lessons and we've tried to use them to make sure they're meaningful, but also cover a range of that rich content as well. And this is available, and you can see there's a hyperlink here, and we're going to make sure you have this presentation. We can then send you this and you can look at all the planning that's been done on your behalf, but also really getting down into what's the key learning for each of these lessons to support the national curriculum. And here's just year 2, for example. So you can see it's very rich and hopefully really help with your planning. And the same is true from secondary too. So if you're doing Key Stage 3, you can see here, again, just one part, year 7 here, is being unpacked to really kind of cover that detail that's needed. So let's have a quick look at year 7, year 8, and year 9. So you can see here, super rich. It really does cover all of national curriculum, but also it's trying to link to that sort of modern aspect too, based on that social context, and really trying to be based on what the research was telling us, the different directions to take. And what we're really pleased with when you look at some of the planning document, let's say year 8, for example, here, and you're looking at the one called Cooking Techniques and Proficiency, you can actually look through this and start to see how these 3, I would say, cooking lessons, 3 practicals, but actually they're very rich in learning. So that's the cooking thread, but we've got aspects to do with health. We've got aspects to do with the social aspect. We've got some food science coming in. We've got aspects to do with the consumer, and we've got aspects also to do with food skills, as well as much, much more in that. So when you get through this, hopefully you'll find it's really going to help support your planning and your teaching too. And there's further support available too. So I've mentioned the website, the program Food A Fact of Life as well. There's lots of advice and support you're going to find on here. So on Oak, you're going to find all the primary and secondary curriculum information. And on Food A Fact of Life, you're going to find lots of support to support you around planning progression. And that's videos as well as PowerPoint and these sort of tools that you can see on the screen here too. So there's lots of things that you can find on there. That's for primary and for secondary too. So I'm going to hand over to Frances now, and Frances is going to do a little bit about how we've tackled the practical lessons and particularly around recipe diversity. Thanks, Frances.
Oh, nearly couldn't get my microphone on then. Thanks, Roy. Yes, so what I'm going to do, as Roy said, is talking about recipes. And this is the bit that I really enjoy about doing these webinars, because I just think it's absolutely fantastic with the subject that we teach, how much learning we can put into doing something like a practical activity. So how much applied learning. And I was talking to somebody today and talking about doing a demonstration, and how we wouldn't just talk about showing and demonstrating how to use skills, but we would be talking about where the ingredients had come from. We'd be talking about sustainability. We'd be talking about health. We might be talking about finance, budgeting, cost of ingredients. So there are so many things that we can cover in an applied way with food education. So just a few here that Roy's put on the screen. So I mentioned these before, but also thinking about history, heritage, food science, hygiene and safety. That's one of my important things. I'm an advocate for food hygiene and safety. Timing as well, making and allowing the pupils to think about managing time when they're putting a recipe together. And certainly towards the end of the year 9 lessons that we've put together, some of the recipes are quite complex and there are lots of different elements to it, and they really have to think about how those all work together and the timings that it will take in order to get your product, your dish, finished at the right time with the different elements that go into it. So some really lovely things, but also maths, English, all of the things that we need to make sure that we're including in our curriculum, in our lessons, right from Key Stage 1 to the end of Key Stage 3. So lots of fantastic opportunities for learning. Thanks, Roy. But then also what we do need to think about is the managing of those recipes, the management of those practical activities, and what we are very aware of. So Roy and I are both ex-secondary food teachers. Sam is an ex-head of D&T in a school, and he taught food as well at secondary level. So we're very much aware about what the practicalities are in the food classroom, but also that schools have got different facilities, different time, different staff with different experiences and levels of skills and knowledge. And also, obviously, you've got the primary setting where facilities may be very simple. It may just be your classroom with a baby belling that you wheel into your classroom. So thinking very practically about what you can do and what you can achieve. And there's lots of recipes that you can choose that will fit, hopefully, the facilities and the other things that you've got. But a few things that we recommend: start simply. So please don't try and rush into making a very complex recipe with your pupils if you're not really fully aware of their previous knowledge and skills, particularly from transition from 6 to 7, you're 6 to 7, or you're unsure of their motor skills, or I mentioned that earlier on. So really start simply and build up those skills and make sure that your pupils are really confident in what they're doing. Consider the learning. I mentioned previously about what all the fantastic learning that comes with making a recipe. And Roy and I particularly are really keen for people to take on board that it's not about the title or the name of the recipe. It's not about making a stir fry. It's about making or learning all of the different elements that go into making a stir fry, all the learning intent behind it that will give you the outcome of a stir fry. So just thinking about all the different learning. Build up over time. Again, it's a bit like starting simply, getting progression, making sure that you and your pupils are confident and comfortable with what you're doing. And then deepen the context. So some lovely photographs of some of the recipes on here. And you can really get to talk about the social, the economic, the history behind some of the recipes. So again, it's not just about the practical skills or the ingredients you're using. And one of my favorite favorite images of the recipes is the fish stack at the bottom. And I'm actually not a great fish fan, but I just love the look of that recipe, and I know there's lots of history around that and street food. So really deepen your learning with your pupils. An awareness of time, that's for you as well, particularly to be aware of how much time, how much can you achieve in your 40, 50, 60 minutes, or maybe longer if you're lucky. And then also the cost of recipes. We've tried to be really careful about the cost of ingredients that we're asking schools to use, and we've given options for alternative ingredients, perhaps using things in season, perhaps using frozen or canned vegetables, just to try and reduce the cost where possible. And then also pupil appeal. Roy mentioned earlier on some research that we at B&F did a few years ago, and we've really tried to build that in and introduce some recipes that we really think that the pupils will enjoy making, and you as teachers will enjoy making as well. And that's right from Key Stage 1, moving into Key Stage 2, perhaps introducing heat in Key Stage 2, and then moving on to Key Stage 3. So you've got nice sort of progression there as well. And then ingredients, equipment and resource needs. So how are you going to get your ingredients? Where are you going to store them? The equipment that you need, the management of the equipment, and then also any other resources that you might need. And one thing that we haven't got on here actually is about your own knowledge and skills, and then what you feel confident and competent in teaching your pupils, and whether you need any additional support in the classroom as well to help you with your lessons. So lots of things to think about. So as far as your foundation with Oak, we've got 76 recipes, and these are all new recipes which have been tried and tested. So out of 108 lessons, 76 of those are practical. So really trying to focus on learning through theory. No, learning the theory through the practical, sorry. Food skill progression built in. So from year 1 to year 9, you'll really see that we're developing not only their practical food skills, their actual motor skills, but their precision and their accuracy as well, because that's a really important thing. So what might be simple knife skill of spreading in year 1 actually can be quite a complex activity when you come to year 9, if you're wanting to make sure that you're attractively spreading something on a cake, for example. We're not doing that many savoury recipes, but that gives you the example of how progression can move on. Pupil outcome and skill key learning points are written, so they're actually provided for you. We'll always show you some of the key learning points, but we've actually been quite explicit about what they should be learning. And then the full lessons are available for free. And I just think as a teacher, having these free to use and also edit to make them suitable for your particular setting is just fantastic. So you've got slides. There's full explanation of the food skills in those. You've got quizzes, starter and end quizzes with the answers as well. Worksheets, again, with the answers, and then videos as well. So how to do it. So for you as a teacher, how to teach the lesson, but also videos to show the pupils how to use and to perform the food skills. And then we've got additional information, and we spent quite a long time thinking about the additional information that would be useful for teachers. And so what we've given is the recipe itself. That is in the slide deck, but we've given it on the additional materials. We've given you some practical considerations. So how could you set this up in your classroom? Do you need to potentially think about the pupils working in pairs or in groups? Can you get ingredients ready in an area of the classroom or the kitchen, and then they can just go and select the ingredients that they might want to use? Any modifications? So modifications to ingredients, we might give you some choices that you could use perhaps for the starchy carbohydrates that go into a dish. Safety, we've included information about safety, but we've also said that CLEAPS is the place that you need to go for safety advice around food and nutrition or cooking and nutrition lessons in schools. And then also allergies, being very, very aware of any pupils in your class that have got allergies or intolerances, or actually any other reason why they can't handle or taste certain ingredients. So we hope it's lots of helpful advice for you. Thanks, Roy. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Roy now, and I think this will be really interesting, this bit. Thanks, Roy.
Thanks, Frances. There's nothing like a big build-up for it to all go pear-shaped, so that's lovely. Thank you so much. Okay, well, let's go on. Well, I think the main thing we want to do is to just sort of remind you about accessing the resources. So you can go onto the Oak website, and you can see here on the screen there's the teaching resources. So you can go in Key Stage, well, early years, but okay, Key Stage 1, 2, and 3. That's what's available for cooking and nutrition at the moment, as well as going in through curriculum plans, and obviously you can go through searching as well. So there's all the units available and all the lessons as an overview too. What we've also got is lots of planning guides and audit materials for you as well. So this is just one example about how you could use the Oak materials to help plan your own curriculum in school. So it's just meant to be a step-by-step plan to help support you, and it's got built-in hyperlinks as well, and just some sort of key questions for you to think about as you're planning it, whether it's by yourself or with a team of people, just to sort of help to, make you think about what changes could be necessary, or maybe they're okay, you don't need to do them, but also just maybe push the boundaries a little bit as well each time. And as you can see, the web links here, you can access that document afterwards. There's lots of support on the Food and Facts Life website as well. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. So across the top, you can see there's big areas, age areas with lots and lots of information. I think Francis was telling me there's something about maybe about 2,000 resources or something like that. There's a lot also with pupils with additional needs, but also really important to support you professionally as well. So there's lots on here if you are looking at updating your curriculum, your schemes of work, schemes of learning and lessons too. So if you don't know about it, I'd recommend to go and have a look at that. Now, one of the things I've been dabbling with is the Oak AI work. And if you haven't been on this so far, I would definitely have a look. Now, if you have been dabbling with AI like I have, and I've mainly been using ChatGPT, it's great, but it is a bit like an enthusiastic intern. You can put lots of stuff in, but you need to make sure your prompts are correct, because if you put rubbish in, you'll get rubbish out, essentially. But it's got better over even the short time that that's been available, and ChatGPT is great if you're looking at information or you want to help to plan lessons and so forth. My caveat, though, is with that, it's not really based on the national curriculum. It could be based on information from around the whole world. So it might not know about the Eat Well guide, or it might have interesting sources for nutrition information. So one thing I really like about the Oak approach is that it's very much based around the national curriculum and all the information it knows because of all the other subjects as well. So let's just give you a quick demonstration tonight. If it's going to work, and just to see how that actually is planning forward. So this is the website you can go to, and then you can start here with Start Creating with AI. So you click on that. You can do this, so do a lesson plan, slide deck, quizzes, and worksheets. Now, Sam will probably be able to tell you a bit more about this afterwards, but what's really interesting is I know that this is still in development. So you can see it's a beta edition. So even the short time I've been using it, I've noticed little changes that have happened too. So I can create a lesson, and then, hello, Roy, here's the AI assistant. What do you want to teach? So let's say I want to do healthy eating, about fruit and vegetables for year 3. So that's my kind of prompt I'm going to teach. I'm going to continue with that. And then here, what it does, it's just thinking about it, it works it out. So it's just having a little think. Obviously, it's using its database that it knows around this. And you can see here, it's already starting to provide some information on the right-hand side as well. And there are different sort of prompts and so forth as it goes through to help you steer you through the lesson creation, which is really helpful. So here we go. So the first thing is, you've selected this, the types of food. So here's my lesson, healthy eating with fruits and vegetables, guidance required. And it's saying to me now, these Oak lessons might be relevant. So I'm thinking, well, that all looks good. So I'm going to continue with that work. So that all looks, types of food, yes. Nutrition, that would be useful, yeah. Impacts and diet. And you can see here, it's starting to already come up with prior knowledge. It's coming up with key learning points for my lesson. And you can modify these or flag them to Oak as well if you don't seem quite right, which I think is a really good idea. So it's asking you a question now. So is the learning outcome okay? The learning cycle, so the packets of information in your lesson, the prior knowledge and the key learning points, do they seem okay? having a quick scan, I'm thinking, well, actually, they do seem pretty good. And also because they're based on a UK context, but actually still fit the national curriculum as well. So I'm going to click continue. Obviously, you can add an extra response. You can say you want something edited, and it will adapt that for you as well. All the time, it's showing you where you are. So I'm on 5 of 10 sections to complete as I go through. So now it's coming up with some misconceptions. And I love the misconceptions in Oak just generally, but I think they're a great way sometimes just to introduce a lesson or just to get kids' interest as you go through. So here we go. All fruits are sweet and all vegetables are savoury. So that's an interesting misconception, isn't it? And it's also come up with some key words. So if you're really interested in looking at keywords and vocabulary development as well, I think that's a great way of doing it too. What's interesting though, unlike ChatGPT, here it's giving you in a structured way that you could use in your school pretty much from the get-go. So I think that's all looking pretty good. Again, I can modify, I can sort of flag it up back to Oak, but I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to continue that as well. So again, it's sort of thinking, and now what it's going to do is actually create some of those resources for you. So not only has it done some of that planning, it's also now generating sort of a starter quiz for you as well. So I'm thinking, yeah, that's saved me some time, doesn't it? That's good. Let's see what it's going to do next. Now it's working on the learning cycle for this lesson. So we're up to number 8 of 10 sections, which is looking pretty good. And I think all the time this is going through, if you can think about how you might use this in your own planning and teaching, because it really does open my eyes about how you can come up with some concepts that you might already be teaching, but you could use the Oak sort of foundation here to actually maybe improve, maybe look at some different words, maybe help to put together some resources as well. So it's coming up here with teacher explanation, slides, image searches, slide text. So again, I think that's all looking great. So I'm going to do continue again as I go through. It's also come up with how different practice tasks you might use, different checks for understanding through the lesson. At the moment, it doesn't put images in the slide decks, but I know that's definitely something that's on the cards. And I think all the time, this is very much like a beta edition. And each time I go onto it, as I say, it seems to be improving all the time and really coming up with something that would be really helpful for you, the teacher, to use. I'm trying to go as quickly as I can because I think it'd be quite nice to see kind of the final result. And then here's the second learning cycle. So about the explanation, but also about the slide text and so forth, about more checks for understanding. So as you go through the slide decks, there's quick checks to make sure people have been listening, which I think is really helpful. And whether you do that verbally or they write them down, that's really up to you. That's your class decision, your pedagogy. And also then thinking about more practice things that you can do, as well as different feedback. And I think that's quite helpful if you're a non-specialist or food isn't your first area. It's actually trying to support you professionally too. And you can use that to find other resources as you go through. Okay, so we're on 9 of 10. So hopefully we've got 10 just around the corner very, very quickly. But I hope you can see the usefulness of this and how it's really going to help going through. So here's the third learning cycle. Again, more information to support you. I'm going to then press continue to go forward. So we've done all of the information. We've got the starter quiz. We've got basically the lesson now written. It's based on the national curriculum. It's in teacher speak. And I think that's great because also it's referencing all the other lessons that it has knowledge of. So science and geography, tasting and testing, all the cooking and nutrition lessons as well. It's got an exit quiz at the end we can get, and they're going to continue again. So it's done all of that now. And then the very last thing it's going to do is actually then make that available for you to download and use. So there's no additional information. That's fine. We're going to continue here to go forward. And I think that's great. So you can see in that comment there, it says the lesson plan is complete. All sections have been filled out. If you would like to review any part, you can go back. Otherwise, you can download the lesson plan, slides and worksheet. And I think that's a great way of creating a lesson that I think you can be much more secure about, knowing that it's going to cover the national curriculum and all your key teaching points as well. So I'm just going to go continue that, and then it will come up at the very end with a way for you to download those resources for you. So I think that's a great way. So if you haven't had a play, go and have a play. 5 minutes. I think it will change your world, hopefully. So hope you've enjoyed having a quick look at that. So based on the lesson, be age appropriate, national curriculum based, and you can tweak and modify as you go through. So it really is step by step, and you can create those lesson plans, slides and quizzes and so forth. So I think that's a really, really useful thing to go and do, as well as those glossaries, the keywords and so forth. One other thing that we've mentioned tonight is about your own confidence and competence in teaching food and nutrition too. So what we've got available for you is a number of different CPD tools to help you. So there's some audit tools which you can go through, a planning guide, and there's a smart planner too. And what we would also say is just sort of review and then use the Oak materials to help support you. For example, Francis mentioned the videos, and those videos might be useful to look at how something is introduced or how a food skills talked about and or demonstrated on the screen. And there are lots of support resources, not just through Oak, but produced by Food Effects for Life and also the British Nutrition Foundation. And these have been developed just really to support this Oak work. So there's an interactive CPD planner, which is really helpful. There are these sort of decision trees, which are quite an interactive approach to finding out information, as well as a curriculum one to help you think about how you would plan this in, with depending on how many hours that you have available each year. And of course, we've got all the previous training. So this is 8 out of 10. So you've got another 7 of rich learning to support your professional development too. So that's all available on the Food Effects for Life website. Brilliant. Well, Francis, I'm going to hand over to you now to do the next steps.
So just to wrap up, just to think about the next things that we think would be really helpful for you to do. And also, I did see somebody had a hand up earlier on. So if you have got any questions, do pop them in the chat, and we'll be able to ask Roy or Sam or me, depending on who the questions are for. So next steps. Do have a look at the Oak curriculum and lessons if you haven't had an opportunity to yet. They really are a fantastic and very rich resource, as Roy has mentioned. Use the audit that's there and available for you. It's a really nice, simple tool, and it can help you identify any gaps. Try out a few lessons. As we've said, it's all editable, but give it a go. You don't have to use all of it. You can use parts of it, whatever fits in perhaps to your curriculum you've got at the moment. The worksheets, as I've said earlier on, the quizzes and the worksheets have all got answers or suggested answers for the worksheets. So really, really helpful, I think. And then use the tools on Food Effects for Life to help you. And then do join us for the next training session. We've got 2 more to go after this one. I'm trying to use my maths then. But we started back in September. And so we've got lots and lots of webinars already recorded and available for you on Food Effects for Life. So if there's anything you want to look back at, I know we've got some primary colleagues with us today. If you want to look back and see specifically how Oak can help you in primary, or equally for secondary, if you want to be specific about secondary, do have a look at the webinar recordings that we have got. So we've just got a comment, somebody saying it's brilliant, I'm only in the job for 2 weeks. So I'm really glad. I'm glad we've been able to help you. I remember starting out very well. So a couple of questions. We haven't got any questions in the chat, but I've got a couple of things that I think I'd like to ask both Roy and Sam. So Roy, I was just going to ask you, as you can see, I'm quite enthusiastic about this idea about AI, and I've just been having a bit of a play, but I'm nowhere near as an expert as you, and I know you've done a lot of work around AI. So it would just be an idea if we could just tell people that where to start if you're unsure where to start.
Yeah, I mean it's a hard one because there's so many AI tools out there, and a lot of them do very similar jobs. So, I mean, I've mentioned ChatGPT. You can get a free account, so at least you can start doing something. And I think it's a great way to have a go. Saying that, I think as well going on to the Oak platform and using the AI to help think about your lessons. I think that's a key thing. It depends what you want as a result. Okay. So tonight is all about curriculum development, all about lessons. So not only have you got the 108 food lessons on Oak, as well as there's obviously food lessons in science and so forth too, but actually using the AI tool, you can create things that you want to teach your pupils, and it will be national curriculum ready and based on reliable data. So, it depends what you want. So if you're focused on curriculum and lessons, you've got some ideas, definitely have a go. It's free and use the Oak AI. If you're just more interested in exploring AI generally, I would personally start with ChatGPT and then spread your wings a little bit. And it is fun, but remember, it's only as good as what you put in, and it can make mistakes. That's the key thing. So don't pass it off as a polished piece of work.
Absolutely. Somebody suggested Curipod as a site that might be worth looking
Great,
at as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
So
brilliant.
that's fantastic. Thank you.
Francis, can I just add a little bit to that? Because I mean,
Yes.
hats off, Roy, for demoing Isla in beta mode when you're not based in the UK. There's a lot of Oak people who are terrified of demoing it live. So very impressive. I think with Isla, like we always built it to be, it's a large language model like ChatGPT, and we wanted the teacher always to be in control, so it's not taking over the development of your curriculum. You are asked questions and prompted to interact with it every stage. And as Roy says, it's based on the curriculum that we have developed. That's where it looks to first before going kind of further than that. But also the thinking behind it, we use this thing called prompt engineering. Don't worry if you don't know what that is, because I had no idea what it was until someone explained it to me. But when you ask it to create keywords, you ask it to create keywords about fruit and veg or nutrition, but behind the scenes there's another prompt that kind of gets added onto that is all the Oak thinking about what keywords should look like, the way we frame them, the language we use. If you put a year 9 in there, it will have something in there about what language you use at year 9. So there's so much more that goes on behind there, and it's educationally safe. We tested it rigorously for that, so that's why you get the high quality ones. And then the final thing I'll say on AI is I saw a brilliant example the other day of a teacher was using it to create lessons, but then in the modify button that Roy showed you, what she was also doing is she had a number of Ukrainian students in her class, and she was using the modify to modify and also have the keywords in Ukrainian and have the outcome in Ukrainian as well. And it was a click of a button, change it, 2 versions, so easy, knowing it's the same lesson and knowing it's going to be robust. So that was a really beautiful way that I saw Isla being used recently.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's amazing. That's really fantastic. Right, Sam, I've got a quick question for you, but before we move on to that, Roy, could you just go back a slide, please? We've had a question about where to find the recordings of the webinars. So you will get this presentation. It is actually going to be uploaded to the Food Effective Life website, and it's the professional development area, and then you'll find it's the title of a drop down is called Oak Food Curriculum to Classroom, and you'll find all of the recordings available there. You're going to try and go on to the website, Roy? Excellent. Oh, and Sam's put in the link as well, so that's brilliant. Thank you. But if we can have a look, so you'll see there's a number of drop downs there, and so it's the 4th one, and this is all the information about the Oak Food Curriculum to Classroom CPD that we've been doing, and you can book your next session on there as well, and it will tell you about all the sessions that we've done already, and the recording, the link is on there. So on that chart, the recording is available, and then right at the bottom you'll find the actual PowerPoint presentation. So hopefully you'll find everything there you need for this. There we go. That's brilliant. Thank you, Roy. Okay, so very quick couple of questions, because I know we have overrun slightly. So Sam, we've talked a lot about food being more than food, and I know what Roy's favourite aspect of this is, but I wonder what yours might be.
Yeah, hope I don't steal your thunder, Roy. For me, I think something that's in the news a lot at the moment, and we know it is in the curriculum assessment reviews, is sustainability and climate change. You know, I think that is such a key part, and obviously we know in the national curriculum, the current one, it doesn't even mention sustainability or climate change. We obviously didn't know about that 10 years ago, but obviously the CAR brilliantly talked about it at length. It had a whole section on it, and I think through cooking, nutrition and design and technology, we have a real opportunity to really richly teach that, whether it's teaching it explicitly through individual lessons and units, but also embedding it within our own practice. I think that's really important. We almost have a responsibility, don't we, as teachers, is to showcase how we can help pupils develop more sustainable, or understand more sustainable diets and such. And I think that's a really important aspect of what we can do. And interestingly, the street food wraps that you showed, that picture that you showed, Francis, that is actually part of one of our Year 9 units, which is Global Food Challenges, where pupils get to look at global food challenges and food systems. And actually the first lesson of that unit, it isn't actually a practical food lesson. You know, they are looking and critiquing those global food challenges. So I think for me, yeah, sustainability, and I think that's going to be a key part of the next iteration of our curriculum. And certainly if I was doing the audit, which Roy showed in my last department, sustainability would be one of the things that we wouldn't be able to tick, not enough anyway, that I would be looking at, and hopefully using Oak to help support me in, you know, developing my curriculum and moving that forward.
Great. Yep. Thanks, Sam. Yep. And I would agree with absolutely everything there. Roy, do you want to say very briefly what yours is? I think I know what it is, but let's see whether I'm right or not.
Well, you know, I like the social history and heritage dimension. And I don't know, just maybe it's just a quirk of mine, but just very quickly, for example, when I was doing a primary lesson and it was around Chelsea buns, there's so much history that you can get from Chelsea and the Chelsea bun shop, and it's linked to royalty and other things that it's made as well. So it just sort of shows you that there's a rich learning through food, and whether you're interested in that part or the sustainable part, where it happens to be, it all comes together. So it's very holistic, and it's a great, well, we wouldn't be here tonight if we didn't all think it's a great learning route.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam's just put on about Scotch eggs. Yes, and probably people just wouldn't believe the conversations that the three of us had around these sorts of things when we were putting all these lessons together.
Don't mention Cornish pasties, yeah.
Okay. Or sponge cakes. What's a sponge cake? What's a Victoria sponge cake, etc. But anyway, that's fantastic. So lots and lots of additional learning, as we said, and some favourite things. And just one very final one, Roy, one top tip for managing recipes or practical sessions.
I think my main thing would always be make sure you test the recipe to death beforehand, because you need to make sure it's actually manageable. And I mean that in a way that not just that you can make it, but if you put yourself in a mind's eye, if you were teaching a 6-year-old, would they be able to hold the ingredient, or would they be able to crack an egg or so forth, or would you need to intervene and have some ingredients that are pre-prepared? And that will obviously change if you're teaching a 12-year-old and so forth. So I think test it, but in your mind's eye, think about the pupil and whether they can actually do it in a practical sense, because yes, it's great to challenge and all the rest of it, but equally success is a great motivator too. So that would be my tip.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a really good top tip, and particularly for people that are starting out as well, is making sure that they've really practiced the recipes at home, and again at school if you can as well, because obviously things vary between home and school. Right, well, that's brilliant. Thank you both so much, Roy and Sam, for joining us this evening, and thank you everybody else who's joined us online tonight. I hope that you found it useful. There's lots and lots of support out there for you, and we hope that you join us next time, and then also look back at any recordings that there are from previous webinars. Please do, if you can, take the time to complete the evaluation. There's a QR code on the screen at the moment. It's really useful for us to be able to see what people think, and then any feedback and any improvements that we can do. If you're unable to use the QR code, you will be sent an email tomorrow, which will have the link to the evaluation in. So thank you very much. Have a great evening, and we hope to see you online again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.